Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for coming back for the last item. Item number 12, which is proposed amendments to Municipal Code, Chapter 19.12, Chapter 19.28, and Chapter 19.112 regarding two-story permits and accessory dwelling unit laws. Application number MCA-2023-002. Applicant is the City of Cupertino, location citywide. Recommend, okay, yeah. So that's the subject we have on hand. And is there a staff report?
There is, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. With me tonight is John Martier, Senior Planner from our department. John will actually be doing a presentation. We'll have a very brief presentation for you, and we'll hear to answer any questions. So thank you. John?
Thank you, Ben. John Martier, and good evening to Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, and to the community of Cupertino at large. So yes, the item is already introduced by the Mayor, so I won't go over the title of the project. So this is a background. We have two parts of this application for a municipal code amendment. There's the two-story permit process as well as the ADU state conformance process as well. So I'll break up the background into two, with the first slide primarily going over the two-story permit process. So when is a two-story permit required? It's required when there is a new two-story addition to a single-family home in an R1 zone, or a new two-story home that's proposed, again, in an R1 zoning district. In the 2-year period from November 2021 to November 2023, there were approximately 768 planning permit applications received. Of those 768, 98 of them were two-story permit applications. And as the staff report indicated, this is the, of all the codified permit processes, this is the number one application that staff takes in. As also I discussed in the staff report, occasionally, at least yearly, staff goes through the zoning, the municipal code, specifically the zoning ordinance, to see what processes can be streamlined. And this year, we looked with as well with the city attorney and city manager as to seeing, can we streamline the process even further by eliminating the two-story permit process. And so that's what we went to Planning Commission November 14th, and we're here for you tonight for the first reading to see, is this something that the council direction wants to go. That being said, although the two-story permit process is recommended to be removed, the new two-story additions or new two-story homes are still subject to the same standards, setbacks, heights, privacy protection measures, whatnot, parking. And so planning staff, instead of looking at those through a planning entitlement, would be ensuring those are complied with during the building permit process. And again, during this building permit process, planning staff will review compliance with codified development standards. That being said, single family permitting processes such as the minor residential permit, which looks at homes proposing balconies, or extending non-conforming wall lines. We'll still have to go through a minor residential permit process, which is again another separate plan entitlement process, as well as residential design review permits, which are two-story homes or second-story additions that fall within a certain building envelope. Those include any second-story side setbacks that are within between 10 to 15 feet rather than the standard 15 feet. Those also include second-story additions, new two-story homes within an R1A zone. If you're not familiar with the R1A, that's the single-family zone that's right behind Infinite Loop campus. It also includes first to second floor ratios of over 66% for new two-story buildings, new two-story homes rather. And so those will be. So the point is, we'll still have those processes. Accessory dwelling units. In terms of the modifications that staff is making, so again, since 2016, staff has come back in 2016, 2017, 2020 to update the city's standards to keep up with the various California Assembly and Senate bills that affect and encourage ADU production. And as if you've kept up with the city's APR reports that we have to submit every year to HCD, you'll notice that the accessory dwelling unit production is quite high in the city since 2016 and accounts for the vast majority of our moderate housing stock in the city. So based on recent changes in state law, the city's ADU ordinance is out of date and many times unenforceable. As mentioned before, the Planning Commission did hear the modifications to the zoning to the Municipal Code amendments November 14, 2023, and Planning Commission recommended a 5-0 that the City Council adopt the proposed amendments to the Municipal Code with modifications. So let me go over the next the analysis of what those modifications are. So the analysis for the two-story permit. Again, so the first part is Municipal Code chapters 1912 administration and 1928 single-family residential zones, and those are the two chapters that govern two-story permit processes. Mostly remove all reference to two-story permits. All prescriptive standards will remain. And in fact, certain discretionary design standards that staff has applied as non-discretionary are proposed to become non-discretionary. These include, I will go through each of them really briefly, eliminating 3-car wide curb cuts. No more than 50% of the front elevation of a house shall consist of garage area unless the lot is not wide enough to accommodate that standard. Usable living area shall be close to the street, while garages should be set back more. Porches shall appear proportionally greater in width and height. Mechanical heating or cooling equipment or associated piping installed on the roof shall be screened from public right-of-way. And this was a standard that was added by the Planning Commission in November. And staff is recommending, on top of this, that an exception will apply to homes in the Eichler R1E zoned neighborhood, which is Fairgrove, to eliminate or to not allow at all any type of rooftop equipment. And again, these, at least the first 4 bullets were standards that were shoulds, and staff is recommending that these should be shalls. So the analysis of accessory dwelling units. So this is a brief table of the changes that are made. I'll go through this pretty briefly. So 3 ADUs. So for streamline, again, so really streamlined, non-streamlined ADUs. The simplest explanation of streamlined ADUs are ones that are internal conversions or attached or detached ADUs that are under 800 square feet on single-family lots, or ADUs that are permitted on multifamily developments. And non-streamlined ADUs are everything, all other ADUs that are not streamlined ADUs. So ADUs on single-family lots are over 800 square feet and whatnot. So the big change for streamlined ADUs is that the ordinance is proposing to be in conformance with state law that allows 3 ADUs per single-family parcel, and any combination of those 4 types of units, with the exception of just 1 per type. Allowance for heights of 18 feet for detached ADU and 25 feet for if it's attached to a principal dwelling unit, and allowance for a second story on attached or detached ADUs. Similar non-streamlined allowance for heights are 18 feet and 25 feet, respectively, for attached and detached and attached, and allowance for second story on attached and detached ADUs. The Planning Commission further went beyond staff's recommendation to allow 3 non-streamlined ADUs per lot, subject to FAR lot coverage and setbacks. That means that the ADUs that are streamlined aren't subject to FAR, aren't subject to setbacks. There's minimum setbacks of 4 feet, but the non-streamlined ADUs are subject to FAR and lot coverage. So although that non-streamlined ADU could be the potential to have 3 on a site, if FAR would not allow, they're not allowed by right to have those 3. And to remove major transit stop and transit corridor thresholds for height and second story allowances. State law allowed the added height and second story allowances if they were within half of a mile of a transit stop. Planning Commission unanimously voted to support removing those thresholds to allow for height and second story allowances. Some state bills for ADUs that came effective of January 1st of this year. AB 1033, ADUs sold separately as condos. This is an optional for local jurisdictions to adopt, and staff is not recommending, and Planning Commission agreed not to include in this amendment until further study's been done. AB 976, owner occupancy requirements prohibited beyond 2025. This is something that the city already is consistent with the state with. And AB 1332, streamlined 30-day approval for pre-approved ADU plans. The city already has a program, and so the Municipal Code currently conforms. Errata, so one change that staff has made after the Planning Commission's recommendation. Originally, we had staff had eliminated from Table 19.112.030 the two-story noticing requirement, because it was thought that the two-story permit would not be recommended. It's not recommended to be eliminated. Rather, so but instead of eliminating this row completely, we just staff has deleted the words two-story and just replaced it with the word design review, just so there is a design review process for noticing in public hearing, comment periods, and expiration dates. Recommended actions that the City Council conduct a public hearing and conduct the first reading of the ordinance, and amending the following: Chapter 1912, Chapter 1928, and Chapter 19112. Next steps: if Council approves the introduction of the ordinance, a second reading would be scheduled for the next regular meeting of the City Council, tentatively scheduled for February 6th of this year. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, John. Council, comments to staff? Councilmember Chow?
Could you clarify the setback for streamlined and non-streamlined ADUs? The streamlined, I believe, is 4 feet.
Correct.
And then for non-streamlined, it's still, you said 10 to 15 feet?
No, 10 to 15 feet would be for the second story additions, or new second story.
And the first story is what, like 8 feet?
Well, typically for an R1, if it's R15, it's 5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's anything, any other R1 above R15 would be a combination of 15 feet.
So if we allow 2-story ADUs, the second story will be 4 feet from the property line?
Correct.
And then we are not allowed, so that second story will be streamlined. So we are not allowed to set any standards on balcony or like window position or screening. Are we allowed to set any standards?
So the state limits the local jurisdiction's ability to apply any type of design standards on ADUs.
On the streamlined ADUs,
Correct.
but I believe that has a limit on the square footage.
Well, so for non-streamlines, there are limits on square footage, FAR. So for a detached structure, as an example, for non-streamlined, is subject to our our accessory building ordinance as well.
Yeah.
So
We are allowed to put standards on non-streamlined ADUs, right?
Correct.
And then the ADUs, the second story ADU, if it were within the major transit, that's streamlined by the state law.
Correct.
But the Planning Commission removed the requirement for within half a mile of major transit. Then, so those second story ADU that's beyond the half mile major transit, are they considered streamlined ADU or not streamlined?
So the transit standard that the state applied to all, both streamlined and non-streamlined, and so Planning Commission decided to I'm trying to think of the correct word. They recommended removing that language.
So that means all two-story ADUs in every site in Cupertino would be considered a streamlined ADU.
Well, not necessarily streamlined, but it will be eligible to have a second story.
Eligible, but
Right.
if it's not streamlined, we are allowed to apply standards like limit on balcony. But you are saying we are not,
Well,
so I'm confused.
I'm just relaying what was recommended by Planning Commission as well as staff at the time. The City Council and City Attorney, please weigh in if I'm speaking out of turn, can apply those design standards to non-streamlined ADUs.
So we
If
can
it's
apply.
if it's the council's desire.
So the council can apply standards on a limit on balcony for second-story ADU,
I believe so for
the
non-streamlined.
ones that's not streamlined.
Correct.
But the current staff proposal does not allow any standards for balcony or setback.
Correct. There are standards for setbacks for non-streamlined. Even for streamlined, there's standards. It's a 4-foot standard, but still a standard. So,
Yeah, I know. But we can add our own standard. 4-foot is a state law standard.
For non-streamlined, yes. I believe that if it's the desire of council to not allow balconies on a non-streamlined ADU, I believe that's the case.
We are allowed to do that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, just clarify. Sorry, I'm just ask a clarifying question. What percentage of the applications do we receive that are non-streamlined ADUs versus streamlined ADUs?
Very minimal.
Very minimal. There's non-streamlined.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for staff? I am not seeing any lights. Vice Mayor Fruin?
So how many ADUs did we approve in the last RENA cycle?
So if I'm going to count from 2016, I think we calculated 143 ADUs.
Okay. Do we know what affordability level those were counted as in the APR?
Moderate.
Okay, so 143 moderate ADUs. What was our total moderate production?
144.
So basically all of them are ADUs, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Right. So it sounds to me like we're pretty dependent on producing this type of housing stock in order to meet our moderate rate income RENA numbers.
Correct. And for further clarification, that number was to the end of 2022. So
Correct,
we haven't
yeah.
produced a 2023 number.
Yeah. Yeah, because 2023 would be in the new RENA cycle. How many moderate rate units are we responsible for planning for in the 6th cycle?
I don't recall. I don't have that number on me, correct?
Okay, I have 755, if that sounds about right to you.
It does, actually.
Okay. So it sounds like we're not producing per year what we would need to in order to make that figure.
That's correct.
All right. So to me, then, it seems like juicing this sort of production is sort of necessary in order to get to the figure that we're looking for, unless we're going to get an awful lot of moderate from other types of projects, and there isn't a whole lot of that beyond Valco. Was there, just turning back to the second story ordinance, was there any particular specific rationale about making an objective standard, the livable area being closer to the front and the garage setback more?
It's a standard that's applied more often than not for newer developments, not just in Cupertino, but even the surrounding cities. It's not to make the garage appear to be dominant in the design of the home. It's to emphasize the living area itself. And that's just a design trend. I'm lucky to have my director being a former architect. He could probably explain that better than I could. But generally, it's a trend to have, just to have the garages not be the emphasis or the focus of the design of the home.
So it's a design trend, but is there like a particularly important safety reason for it, or is it just this is what the industry seems to be doing?
It's more the latter than the former. I can't think of a safety reason for that.
Okay. Is there a particularly good reason for constraining an architect to that specific standard?
It was a standard that was important at a certain point by council, and so we enforce it.
Okay. Got it. But on a sort of discretionary basis before?
Correct.
Okay. All right. In looking back through the tables, there's also some discussion about multifamily housing, and there's a number of ADU bills that have attached to have attached to multifamily housing. Which species of multifamily housing is counted as such in Cupertino?
Anything that's two units or above.
So anything in an R2 zone would be considered multifamily?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Given the standards that we have in R2, would you say that they're closer to single family or to R3?
In design and setbacks, I would say closer to R1.
Okay, all right. I will reserve the rest of my time. Thank you.
Councilmember Wei, thank you.
So we're asking questions right now,
Yes, we
not
are.
making comments. So my question is just to be clarified, streamline and non-streamline. It's the square footage of the ADU that separates the streamline, non-streamline?
That's a major indicator. Outside of the fact of also multifamily, ADUs are also considered by rights, by definition, streamlined.
Okay. The other question is about height versus two-story. I look at the allowance for height is 18 feet for a detached ADU and 25 feet if it's attached.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really the feet that's limited. He say if we want 18 feet, it could build a two-story, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and then 25 feet, it could build a two-story. Does it go to 3 stories, 25 feet?
That would be very, very short.
Okay, yeah. So,
Very limiting.
so I was discussing with a friend. They said, "Well, if I want to build a dollhouse for my kids, I can put 18 feet to 4 stories." Okay,
Yeah.
So it's the feet that mandates the story.
So, but ceiling height has to be at least 7 feet by the building standards code,
Okay,
and so
by
then there
building
has to be
code
a certain amount of space in between the floors,
Right.
which I am not good enough at building code
Yeah.
to know what it is.
Okay.
But
So what I'm saying is, it's the height that mandates is the 2-story instead of we're saying 2-story.
And for further clarification, Chris, it's also 2 stories in the state law, correct?
I don't remember if it's 2 stories in the state law or if it's just the height. I think
Okay.
it might just be the height.
Yeah.
And my third question is, I know we have some pre-approved ADUs. I know San Jose has a lot. We have a few?
Yes, when the program first launched, we had 5. Unfortunately, they have to resubmit at the building code changes or updates every 3 years. So when we sent the notice to reapply, only 2 took us up on that.
Okay, so now we only have 2.
2, correct?
Are there any pre-approved plans 2-story ADUs?
None.
No. Okay. So, okay, that's I do believe 2-story ADUs are not very popular yet. Maybe. So you're gonna have to be narrow and tall, and it's not really functional to live in a less than 800 square feet 2-story ADU. Would be very small, up and down, right? So that's I don't see how that's going to be really popular, but you never know. So that's my question so far. Thank you.
Let's go with Vice Mayor Fruin. Oh, okay, all right. Councilmember Moore.
So for that 800 square foot 2-story unit, you could have a 20 by 20 downstairs and a 20 by 20 upstairs. Is that right?
Meaning 400 square feet on each floor, correct? Yes.
Yeah, and then it's a staircase going in between there. So I could actually see that working. I my house has like bedrooms that are 10 by 11. They're tiny little things. Okay, and then I was just looking at a Turner Center study on the ADUs, and I was wondering if you have some kind of local statistics for what percentage are actually being rented out, or are we seeing a lot of sprawl that people are doing on their own properties?
I don't have percent. I don't have the statistics on that. Many of our ADUs, our ADU production came in concurrently with new two-story homes. We had a few local developers that, in a way to market their homes, would actually come in with two-story permits. I'm sorry, excuse me, ADUs as part of their new two-story homes.
Okay, but one thing that's kind of interesting in this report that I'm looking at is how much less expensive it is to build the ADU versus going out and building a BMR project. I don't know if you've had some thoughts on that, the comparison. Like, what do you have some idea of how the cost of an 800 square foot ADU in Cupertino, something like that?
I do not. We do have a tool through the city's website, through the Santa Clara County, called the County Collaborative, where you can calculate the cost of an ADU production. The last time I played with that tool, I think it came out to around $250,000 to $300,000 for a standard ADU to construct.
And then you consider that in comparison of the veranda came in at $760,000 for the city to produce that. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Chow.
Hi. So I remember when I looked at this website for pre-approved plan, at the time there were only really tiny units like 400, 500 square foot, not practical. And I looked at San Jose website, they have much bigger pre-approved plans. So do we have plans to get more practical pre-approved plans?
Yeah, it's, the big difference between San Jose and Cupertino is that San Jose is a one-stop shop. Unlike, we have so many outside agencies. Luckily, in the last few months, we've gotten fire back on site twice a week for 1 hour each day. But we don't have Cupertino Sanitary on site. And there's a few other outside agencies we don't have on site. And so what makes San Jose more attractive for a program like that is that every agency that reviews ADU plans to be on site, and you can walk in and an hour later have your permit, and that's just not possible with us. And so it's been a little bit of a deterrent. Building, I could do it in an hour. My colleagues in building and public works and environmental services can do all that stuff fine, but the resident will still have to go across town to Cupertino Sanitary or wait for fire on a certain day to come in and get that done. So the attractiveness of the program is not as appealing as it is in San Jose.
Okay, so there is a square footage limit on the streamlined ADUs.
Correct.
For the non-streamlined ADUs, there is no square footage limit, but there is the FAR limit that combined with the main house, they still need to be under the FAR of that.
That's correct. There's, particularly for detached units, there's 2 FAR levels for detached structures. Altogether, there's you have to be within the 45% FAR for the whole site, but also 30% of the FAR of the rear yard as well. So there's a couple different levels that you have to meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And now, when we design a law, as long as it's allowable, someone is going to do it. So assuming that I'm building a house, and the primary house have to abide by the setback for the primary house, But if I want to build bigger, I can build a primary and then add ADU 1 month later, and I say that's my ADU. And then I don't need to abide by the same setback. So would that be basically relaxing our single family home standard?
So the portion that's the ADU would be the only portion of the home that would be relaxed, to use your term. The rest of the house that's non-ADU would have to.
But I could build a big house and I claim this is my ADU, that's my ADU, this is my ADU, and then I can have 4 feet setback around. That's technically legally allowed right now.
The portions that are yes. I mean, if that portion of the single family home is an ADU, and it meets our ADU guideline or ADU standards, then yes, you're correct. It could be 4 feet.
Okay, so
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually, City Channel accidentally restarted Councilmember Chow's timer to 5 minutes, but she really only had 1 minute left.
oh, okay, 1 minute left.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So it sounds like for the 2-story ADU, we don't have very good standard right now because it's kind of a new thing. So I see that the staff recommendation in the Planning Commission include the limitation of half a mile walking distance to transit, and the Planning Commission removed that. I wonder, can we, as first step, still include that limit so that that gives us time to polish our municipal code on 2-story ADUs for non-streamlined units?
I think that's applicable if the council agrees with that. I think the way the HCD sees it is, as long as if you can't be more restrictive than what the state laws have mandated for the local jurisdictions. You can always be more liberal, be more permissive,
Yeah.
just the other direction. So if council agrees to.
But once we relax, it's very hard to cut back. So it's better to be careful, right?
Councilmember Wei.
Okay, Mayor, you gotta remind me, how many minutes do I have left?
2 minutes and
Okay, thank you.
15 seconds.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. So on the rental or owner occupied requirement, we saw some public comments. We're not allowed to do that, are we?
No, in fact, as noted in this slide, one of the new assembly bills was to make that an indefinite standard, which was only the 2025 originally. And in fact, just to add on to that, the city hasn't had that standard since I had been here, and I've been here for 10 years, and even before 2016, it wasn't a standard.
And my second question is that 30-day approval, is that a state mandate?
Yes.
Okay, and then with our calling the sanitary this and that, now one-stop shop, is it realistic for to get a permit within 30 days?
Oh, absolutely. But a lot of that has to do with the applicant responding to comments in a reasonable fashion as well.
Okay, and then I think I can see why San Jose gets so many pre-approved. San Jose is a big city. I mean, they got much more ADUs. So why we're not attracting pre-approved ADUs? Is there any way you recommend? How do we attract them to? Because pre-approved really gives the residents much more faster choices, right?
So when we first started the program, myself and a few other colleagues interviewed a lot of cities that had similar types of programming. And there's a few different types. And so just to go over the two, we decided on the San Jose model because it was minimal investment from the city, right? It was just provide the program, they pay us for a building permit to. Mm-hmm. It ended up being just advertising for them on their website for their services. Then you had the San Ramon model, which is the city invested $50,000 with an RFP to buy plans from an architect. They put those plans on the webpage, and the residents could use those plans to submit for building permits to have those ADUs. And I believe those are a lot more successful because the plans.
Thank you. I think you have a couple of ideas then, right? Thanks.
Vice Mayor Fruin.
I don't have a whole lot of time left, but realistically, what kind of, can you really build a two-story ADU within 18 feet? What kind of roof would that have? What would it look like?
So we do have one ADU that I reviewed that is 2 stories out of Monte Vista, and that was a flat roof. And so.
Got it. All right. So within, and would you imagine that the reason for there being a flat roof is just that it's constrained by the height?
Correct.
Okay. And then, as quickly as you can, in the draft housing element that was most recently submitted, there is a strategy, HE 1.3.8, that speaks to effectively the policy that we're looking at today. Was the intention behind this to help us enact something that is in the draft housing element?
I have to talk. What's that?
Yeah, partially. That's
Partially.
correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I had a question about the number of ADUs. We're allowed 3 ADUs. That would be the maximum
For streamline, correct.
for Streamline.
And for non-streamlined, it's you can on a big enough parcel. And so the way the streamline ordinance that was recommended by Plan Commission really favors parcels that are quite large and that can accommodate with FAR and setbacks.
And have we had any requests for 3 or more than 3? Or
We've had requests for 2, 3, not yet.
okay. And my other question was, what was the rationale for us saying we needed one of a kind if we had 3 ADUs built? Yeah.
Oh, so one of the rationales is that you wouldn't have 3 detached ADUs in a rear yard. To say it's essentially be eliminating a rear yard.
Which was what?
It's essentially eliminating a rear yard area completely. So that was one of the rationales. If I'm understanding your question correctly, that your question's basis what's the rationale of only allowing one type
Right.
of the
Exactly.
3?
Exactly.
Yes. So that's
So
one.
if I was the property owner, I wouldn't be able to get two attached ADUs.
Correct.
So that would not be my prerogative.
Yes, it would have to be like a JADU, an attached ADU,
Yeah.
or a detached if you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so all right, let's invite public comments now, since we're done with asking the staff the technical questions.
Yes, Mayor, I have 4 speaker cards to request to speak in-house, and I see 5 hands raised on Zoom. Please submit your cards in the next 9 minutes or raise hands on Zooms if you'd like to speak on this item. So first speaker is Jennifer Griffin, followed by Peggy Griffin, followed by Long Zhao.
I'm sorry, but this state law is out of control. You know the RENA numbers are magic. I sat through a Zoom 2 times with a statistician, a CPA that had worked for the state of California, and he said the RENA numbers are wrong. They're magic mushroom. They're based on nothing, okay? So you are trying to destroy every part of my city without asking me? I'm sorry, Mr. Ting, assembly member in San Francisco, is responsible for these 2 travesties. Well, I'm sorry. The last 7 years, none of these legislators, and Mr. Wiener, who seems to be the assembly member or senator for every state, every city, no one has asked the public's opinion. Well, no one is putting one of those ADUs next to my property in 30 days because I'm going to hire a surveyor. I own my lot. I have put my sweat equity into it, and I was paying 75% of my income for my housing. So YIMBYs, chew on that. No one asked me in the 90s anything about me. They didn't care about me. All I hear is whining. Oh, I have to pay 30% of my income to provide housing. Sorry. You know, this is the reality land. To get a surveyor, it is $7,000. And I want to make sure no one is putting one of these things anywhere near my property. I have legal rights. I'm hiring a surveyor. And if they find there is no way that anyone can put one of these danged things on my property line or within 4 feet of my property. No one has talked about the fact that you have a 2-story ADU. It is going to be in the high voltage lines of the power poles. We have power lines across the back of our property, and there are 5-foot PG&E clearance setbacks on 3 parts of the property. So Mr. Ting put in this stupid law. It's stupid. It is very stupid. And no one said what happens if the 2nd story of the ADU is in the high voltage wires. So let's talk about that tonight. That is reality. I would not have any of my kit and kin live in these. These things are going to be peeping Tom towers. You're going to have gigantic windows looking into people's backyards. And I know of an ADU in another city that is built on the roots of 2 150-year-old oak trees.
You're now muted. Next we have, I think sorry, my microphone went out. So we have Peggy Griffin, followed by Long Zhao, followed by Jean Bedord.
Peggy, Long Zhao, Jean.
I see Peggy Griffin online, so.
Peggy?
Yes.
Oh, I'm off. You off?
Okay, so Long Zhao, followed by Jean Bedord.
Does this one work?
Yes.
Does it works? Okay.
That work?
Good.
Just one moment.
Okay.
Video. So can you hear this microphone?
Yeah.
No?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Lang Jiao, and tonight I'm representing Cupertino Voice. And Cupertino Voice is a small group of Cupertino residents who care passionately about our community and the welfare of our city. We performed a survey in December of 2023 regarding the new ADU policies passed by the Planning Commission on November 14, 2023. So we received 169 total responses, including 148 from verified Cupertino voters. I will share some of the results which have received a significant total of at least 55% of the votes. And those votes are from we counted from the verified Cupertino voters. So for the question this question is that what are your concerns about those new policies? And the option received more than 55% is, I'm concerned about too many cars trying to park on my street. So parking. And next question is that, do you support the change to increase the number of ADUs allowed on each resident lot? more than 55% of the registered voters said no. The question is, if the city council adopts the changes, how comfortable would you be with your neighbor having multiple ADUs? There is, oops, which one works? Okay, on the residential lot. The two options are, I would not like it and would actively oppose it. And another one is that I would not like it, but I would not oppose it either. So both of them together, yeah, both have I would not like it.
That is actually your time. We started the timer a minute late, so your time has elapsed.
Okay. It says I still have 50
Yes, we
seconds.
started the timer 1 minute late, so you used your full 3 minutes.
I don't understand. So
Your
let me just finish it.
Your time has elapsed, sir.
I still have 45 minutes. Sorry.
So your time is elapsed.
Says both sets I would not like it, and
Point
the
of order,
combination
Mayor, this
is more
speaker's
than
time limit
65%.
has now elapsed. Sir, your time has elapsed. Thank you. Next we have Louise Sadati.
Can you guys hear?
Yes, thanks.
Hi again. Hello. I'm your favorite lamppost here again. So, I just want to speak in support of the recommendations from the Planning Commission and the city staff to streamline our ADU process. It will help our city to make housing available for people that can't afford the insane price of housing in Cupertino these days for people trying to have a house. We've lost so many people who've moved out because of the cost of housing. So ADUs might help with that process. And in terms of the previous speaker and his survey, in my prior life, I worked in UCSF in research. I worked for the Cardiovascular Research Institute, and we did a lot of research on pediatric cardiology. But anytime you do a survey, it should be from an unbiased person or group that's doing the survey. So this person obviously has his own views, and he's conducting a biased survey. And it's like the tobacco company conducting their own survey on how safe cigarettes are. And lo and behold, their survey says that tobacco is safe. So there you have it. And so if you're going to conduct a true survey, you need to have the city conduct the survey, because the city has a whole process where it's unbiased, scientific, and based on proven protocols. So I think it's laughable that somebody comes up and says, I'm conducting a survey. So this is what I found based on the 100 people that I've contacted. So I would like our council to actually depend on the information gathered by our city staff and on the information from the Planning Commission, and for the city council to use their fine minds to really rely on facts to make the ADU process easier, to make this city more open and welcoming to new people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. And Gina, I apologize, I skipped over you. It's you're welcome to provide comments now. Welcome.
Thank you, no problem. Once again, good evening, Mayor Mohan, council members and staff. I don't plan to make this a habit. Anyway, my name is Jean Bedord and I am a resident of Cupertino. I'm here to support the staff and Planning Commission recommendations. I think it's necessary to step back and not get lost in the weeds. What's the purpose of this new ordinance? Well, first of all, it's to streamline the process, eliminate an extra step. Now, as someone who has done a house addition, I can tell you it is time-consuming and it takes twice as long to do something as you ever expect. We need to simplify that. Take out any unnecessary steps. That would be very helpful. The second thing that we're trying to do is encourage more housing. Now, the people I've talked to who are building ADUs are doing it primarily to either house senior members of their family or friends or adult dependent children. They're not out there building, rental units per se. It's to accommodate their own families or extended families. So in light of that, what this council needs to do is make things as simple and remove as many restrictions as possible. I still don't understand the reasoning behind one of each type of ADU unit. Why don't you let the property owner and their architect decide what is possible on the piece of property? Not 5 people up here on the dais who don't know the property and throw out hypotheticals, and we've already heard there are they don't have an application for 3 ADUs, regardless of what the law says. If your lot isn't big enough, you're not going to build 3 ADUs. Most people are going to be building 1 because it's for one specific member of their family. Anyway, I would encourage City Council to accept the sensible recommendations made by the Planning Commission and the staff and approve this and not spend so much time on details which are not that relevant and which slow down the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And now we will move to our hands raised on Zoom. There are 9. We will start with Allison Singolani, Ava Chow, and Kendra Rosenberg. Welcome, Allison.
Good evening, Mayor Mohan, Vice Mayor Fruin, and council members. This is Allison Singolani, Policy Manager with Silicon Valley at Home. SB at Home recognizes the City of Cupertino's important and necessary actions to bring its ADU ordinance into compliance with state laws. Also, removing unnecessary discretionary processes such as the 2-story permit and expanding ministerial approval of ADUs makes the city's processes simpler and more accessible for homeowners, saving them time and money while furthering the city's own goals of providing additional housing in all neighborhoods. It also very sensibly eliminates the source of unnecessary work for staff, allowing them to focus on what matters to deliver results for Cupertino's residents. We also agree with the Planning Commission's important recommendation to remove major transit stop and transit corridor thresholds for height and second-story allowances, enabling homeowners throughout the city to build a 2-story ADU, and again, furthering the city's own housing goals. We are concerned that the height allowance of 18 feet for a detached ADU, while technically in compliance with the minimum allowable height limit in state law, is not adequate to allow a range of designs for a 2-story ADU, as the average height of a 2-story residence is between 20 to 25 feet in height, depending on the pitch of the roof and the height of the ceilings. Retaining the 18-foot height maximum is likely to result in 2 outcomes: that few 2-story ADUs are built, undermining the successful and important source of housing units for the city, and that homeowners will be limited in their ability to design an ADU that complements the existing dwelling and neighborhood. We recommend that the 2-story ADU height limit be increased to at least 24 feet. This is in line with detached ADU height limits in peer cities, such as Sacramento, where the same height limits apply for a primary residence and ADU, bringing the limit for an ADU in an R1 zone to 35 feet. Santa Rosa, where two-story ADUs can reach 27 feet. Redwood City and San Jose, where a 24-foot height limit applies for two-story ADUs. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Allison. Next we have Ava Chow, followed by Sandana Siva, followed by Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Ava.
Good evening, Mayor Mohan and honorable city council members. My name is Ava Chow. I am speaking on my own behalf. I really appreciate streamlining the process of ADUs. It makes it easier. Not only that, when you're streamlining the process, there's less bureaucracy, which also I hope that in the long run it will also save the city money as well. There's also, because of the streamlining process, it could encourage more of our residents to have the possibility of considering and maybe also applying for ADUs in our city. Our city definitely does need more housing, and there are many ways in which we can have more housing, and ADUs is one of them. So I thank you for streamlining the process of ADUs, and I hope that we have a unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. Next we have Kendra Rosenberg, followed by Sandana Siva, followed by Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Kendra.
Good evening, council members and staff. Thank you for your time, and a special thanks to John for his presentation. I appreciated the input on the ADU streamlined versus unstreamlined. I run my own residential architectural firm out of Los Altos, and I serve on the Palo Alto Architectural Review Board. So I am quite familiar with some of these ADU laws, rules, and regulations. One of the things that we have found, and I apologize for taking time for this on this evening, I'll try and keep it short. You guys in Cupertino have somewhat of a niche market that is a little bit untapped at the moment. There are several houses built on the hillside properties where they are constructed as two-story homes with extra tall crawl spaces. Some of these crawl spaces, as is with one of my clients, is up to 10 feet tall. These were legally constructed back in the day, and they are just uninhabited, unutilized spaces underneath the existing homes. The way that the current language is written does not allow for these spaces to be converted to ADUs. With the contention that we're hearing from other members tonight, I would urge you guys to reconsider that and to make an allowance to add language to allow for the conversion of these extra tall crawl spaces. It would really allow for homeowners to build these new ADUs sort of more efficiently, less expensively, and with fewer impact on neighbors by utilizing the existing structure of a property that they already own. Now, given this is a little bit of a niche item because there are not, hundreds of these, there's probably a few dozen. And again, specifically more in those hillside homes. But I think that that would also be a possibility to expand ADUs quickly. And just to tie into what was presented tonight, if that could be in the streamlined situation, that would be ideal. But again, maybe it does need to go through the unstreamlined process. But having those extra tall crawl spaces within existing housing that already is built and being able to flesh that out into something that's the habitable, utilizable space for an ADU would be really beneficial and would make some of these processes and some of these projects go a little bit faster. I specifically am here tonight representing a client of mine on San Felipe Road, and we would appreciate your time and consideration on just adding that simple language to say that those crawl spaces, extra tall crawl spaces, could be converted to ADUs. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Kendra. Next we have Sandana Sipa, followed by Peggy Griffin, followed by Kamyab Mashian. Welcome, Sandana.
Hi, my name is Sandana Siva. I am a senior at Lynbrook High School. I'm also a member of Cupertino for All. I wish there was more affordable housing in the city of Cupertino. I've also been sad about the recent schools closures and the Cupertino Union School District. I feel like the closures can be attributed to the housing crisis. Due to the lack of housing in Cupertino, there has been a lack of enrollment in our schools. Moreover, I would like to own a house in the future, most probably in the city. And looking at the current cost of average house in Cupertino, the situation doesn't seem very probable for me. I'm here to speak in support of item 12 as recommended by the Planning Commission, which will further streamline middle-income ADU projects. I also believe that the City Council should try to minimize the regulatory barriers in building ADUs to make it easier for homeowners to build this crucial home type, which will make Cupertino more diverse in terms of class and race, as well as more inclusive for multi-generational families. This new ADU law will increase the abundance of missing middle housing in Cupertino, which can alleviate the housing crisis. ADUs have been consistently the most successful type of home that has been built in Cupertino. This ordinance will save the city staff money, time, and resources by streamlining more, allowing for the processing of more homes. There is no need to add more regulatory barriers for building ADUs, like discretionary review and more unnecessary requirements, such as proximity to transit. Passing this ordinance will help alleviate the housing crisis to an extent and make the city more diverse and inclusive, and hopefully we will have more enrollment in our schools. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please pass this ordinance.
Thank you, Sandana. Next we have Peggy Griffin, followed by Kamyab Mashian, followed by Glenn Fischler. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Kirsten, and good evening again, Mayor Mohan, City Council members, staff. I am in support of ADUs, but with modifications to the current plan. ADUs accommodate families. They provide facilities for the disabled family members and extended family, as Jean Bedord had mentioned. I am in support of making it easier for canned plans, but with balance. I'm asking you, I do not agree with the speaker that said 2-story detached increase the heights. I am for ADUs with objective standards. Power, safety, power lines. If you're building under a power line, please don't allow that, or come up with the modification. Windows on second stories need to be higher so the neighbors aren't impacted. Balconies shouldn't be on ADUs. You need the space. And the half-mile to transit encourages building within the transit window of a half a mile. So that is an enticement. If you take that away, then it doesn't matter. Anyway, that is my concern, and I leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Next we have Kamyab Mashian, followed by Glenn Fischler, followed by Lisa Warren. Welcome, Kamyab.
Good evening again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and staff. I urge you to adopt these amendments to the Municipal Code. As was pointed out in the initial presentation, ADUs are responsible for most of the new homes added to Cupertino in recent years. They are responsible for the vast majority of below market rate housing. If we want to be serious about confronting our housing shortage, we need to streamline the process for building ADUs. We need to make this process simple for property owners who want to unlock new value from their property. We need to make more affordable units available to low-income tenants, and ADUs naturally fill that role, especially as larger projects like Balco get dragged out year after year. We need to allow for multi-generational families to live nearby without being crammed into a single home. ADUs allow for this kind of multi-generational living. As was noted by the Vice Mayor, it will be very difficult for the city to meet its RHNA obligations without taking this step. However, I also firmly believe that it is the right step, regardless of state law. My other point is regarding the design standards this amendment would fix in place. Given the dire housing crisis we are in, I would urge the council to consider dropping any standards standards that do not contribute to health or safety. Aesthetics are important, but now is not the time to place more barriers in the way of much needed housing that is otherwise safe. Apart from this consideration, I urge you to adopt the amendments and help further speeding up the creation of new homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamyap. And our final three speakers that had their hands raised before the cutoff is Glenn Fischler, Lisa Warren, and Shivani Kay. Welcome, Glenn.
Good evening again, Mayor Mohan, Vice Mayor Fruin, City Council members and staff. This is Glenn Fischler again, longtime city resident, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I support City Council's approval of the Planning Commission's recommendations to amend the city ordinance to streamline two-story permits and to bring the city's ADU ordinance into compliance with recent state law changes. After reviewing the staff and Planning Commission's reports and their recommendations, I believe these amendments are appropriate and will serve the best interests of the city, of the residents of our city. And in particular, the changes to the ADU ordinance will help to improve the city's long-term smart housing needs. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight on this important matter.
Thank you, Glenn. Next we have Lisa Warren, followed by Shivani Kay. Welcome, Lisa. Up.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi. So I'm glad I was able to hear Peggy Griffin's comments because I would agree with each and every one of them for similar reasons and other reasons. And, you know, I just want to point out, people who believe that ADUs are being built for low-income, unknown people to move into people's backyards, it's not happening that way. It is mostly extended family or just a reason, an ability to make your home bigger than allowed by single family rules. And it's obvious if you go out and look at new construction, and I've said this before, so I'm not going to waste my minute saying it again, but you're foolish if you believe that there is low-income housing for people who need it in the city in ADUs. Our neighbor built an ADU when they rebuilt their house. It's less than 700 square feet, and they charge $3,200 a month. And those people have no yard. So they are renting it out, but really no one's renting it. It sends empty because of the rent they asked for. So you just got to get realistic about that, please. Just a little quick nod to the allowing high ceiling basements to be used. That's a legitimate request, I believe. Don't know if it will really produce housing for people who aren't already here living with someone else, but it's sensible. That's what, well, anyway, okay. So again, I agree with all of Peggy's things, and the design guideline is so very important, especially if people are going to be having multiple ADUs on a lot that's just crammed with 4-foot setbacks. What do we do about privacy screening? If there's no ground for plants to grow, they're living on a very bare place. So their design of what you're going to see is incredibly important. So don't slough off on that. I just am concerned that this didn't have more discussion publicly before it came to Planning Commission, and that the night it came to planning, there were other things going on that other people had to be at because there's dual bookings of important meetings. The Planning Commission hadn't met.
That is your time, Lisa. Thank you. And our final speaker is Shivani Kay. Welcome, Shivani.
Thank you.
Tonight, I'm speaking in support of streamlining our ADU process consistent with the research and hard work of staff and our Planning Commission and all the information that they've gathered on this topic. I also wanted to state that I personally know 3 low-income friends of mine who did actually stay in ADUs, and they had no idea who the people were up until they moved in, and they actually created lifelong friends. So just wanted to flag that. There are also a couple fear-mongering things that derailed, distracted, and confused your honorable city council tonight. As a concerned citizen for the future of our lovely city, I want to redirect your attention back to the issue at hand. This is a vote for structural efficiency and streamlining the possibility to build ADUs. This is not about what price point to pick each specific ADU to be. This is not about your city council members being plant experts or botanists for gardening. Do not let someone take up your esteemed and logical time as our leaders with illogical hypotheticals. Being in favor of this is a matter of process, not some enforcement everyone is beholden to. Some of these speakers tonight are making it sound like upon the passing of this, everyone is suddenly going to have people knocking at their doorstep, being forced to sprout an ADU in their backyard. This is about streamlining procedure for those who want to have the choice to make middle housing in Cupertino more available. The keyword is choice. They also forget that people also have choice with who they want to lease out their ADUs to. Leases and contracts still exist. No one is going to be moving against anybody's will into an ADU or into your property. I'm also confused why any rational body of leaders would be for creating or preserving procedural hurdles and processes. We're also not deciding the architectural intricacies and interior design choices. That's a separate conversation down the line. The processes in question today have to do with efficiency and efficiency alone. ADUs make the possibility of affordable housing possible. We are better than this unevolved mentality of I suffered so everyone else has to as well. Please adopt the amendments to our municipal code. Please help our community be the most inclusive it can be. I would love to see more people creating more of a sense of community at Cupertino. And I sincerely hope that you don't get swayed by fear-mongering and that you really just vote to the issue at hand. Thank you so much for your time tonight and every time at City Council meeting. I really respect and admire you all, and I hope you continue to vote in a way that brings Cupertino to be the magical place we know it.
Thank you. That is your time. Mayor, that is our final speaker.
Okay. That ends the public input section of this hearing. Let's bring it back to council. I would like to start by inviting a motion on this issue. Is there a motion? Councilmember Moore?
I move that the clerk read the title of ordinance number 22-2254, that further reading of the ordinance be waived, and that the City Council conduct the first reading of the ordinance by title only.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion proposed by Councilmember Moore, seconded by Councilmember Way. Discussions.
May I, through the mayor, ask a question of the attorney? I did not say exempt from CEQA.
It's so I would not recommend including that in the motion because it's not necessary and it's not in the agendized item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it stands as you've stated, Councilmember Moore. Okay, discussions from the rest of the council on the motion. Councilmember Chow.
So, question about the crawl space. So, if that's allowed, is there any concern from staff, or do we need to limit certain type of crawl space to allow?
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm familiar with this this property. It's because it's in an R1 zone, we don't allow third stories, and by converting this crawl space, you would essentially be creating a third floor. Had this been in an RHS zone, a hillside zone, it would be allowed, which is unfortunate because for face value, this property is a hillside property. Unfortunately, it has the zoning of an R1, which could work in their benefit in some cases, and other cases like this one.
So that property needs to be rezoned to hillside zone.
It would be, yeah, but I mean it's surrounded by R1s. You'd be looking at spot zoning and one.
So it's not a. So could we possibly consider that as part of the housing element? Maybe not just that one, but the area, since it's on the slope.
Staff can take that under consideration. I don't know if that's a direction we can give at this point, but
yeah, no, I'm not sure that addressing a specific property is agendized.
So.
Okay, but that could be considered. Because it really doesn't have a lot of impact on the aesthetics of the house to allow that. So
I guess I'm if there were an application related to that property, that council could consider different ways to address that. But I mean, this is a citywide zoning that we're looking at.
But we are going to do rezoning this year, right?
Through the mayor and city attorney, you can chime in. I would not recommend change the zoning for one particular parcel surrounding by other zoning district to be included in the housing element. This may raise additional questions from each city, which would jeopardize our city housing element.
But in the housing element, we are rezoning many areas of the city.
Applicable areas.
Okay.
Councilmember Wei?
Yes, my comment actually are a couple questions for our staff. So I am very, I've always a proponent of more restrictions is not necessarily the best for the city or for homeowners. So the rationale for have each one detached, one attached, one junior, and also one conversion, I think that's the 4 choices, right? So say if I have a really big lot and I can really comfortably put 2 detached ADU in my lot, but that's not allowed in the single family area, right? So if that's allowed, is there any setback line or distance between 2 ADUs to govern that, to limit, like you said, occupy the whole yard?
So between structures, particularly accessory structures, we require a setback of 5 feet between the eaves. And this is really a fire standard that's been applied into the zoning ordinance.
And if I understand correctly, ADU also has a setback line between the main house and the detached ADU. Is that 10 feet?
It's 5 feet.
Oh, it's 5
between
feet.
the eaves, yeah. So it's consistent.
Okay, so 5 feet is pretty standard. So if we relax you have to choose 3 out of the 4, say whatever fits into your plan, the setback line still exists.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So thank you. I am really for relax it, because if I have a home that I want to do 2 junior ADUs instead of 1 detached one, I feel that the homeowner should have the right to decide, as long as there are standards to follow, that we're not going to crowd 2 ADUs together. There is setback line that's regulated, right? Okay, so that's my first question. My second question is about multifamily homes and single family. First, when I read this, I was a little confused. You know, the multifamily seems to, you can allow 2 detached ADUs, maximum 2, no more than 2 units. Right. For a single family, we're saying that just 1, you have to pick the 3. Why are we treating multifamily units, say the 2 duplex, different from the single family units? Because I remember Vice Mayor Froon asked, is it duplex is close to R1 or R3? It looks like it's more in compliance with R1. Is there any reason why we're not treating duplexes use the same rules for single family?
it really has to go back to state law, in terms of the diversity of streamlined ADUs on a particular site. That's the bare minimum. That's the basis of state law. So we came in with that recommendation on the bare minimum. If council or plan commission wanted to recommend something like they had that's a little more liberal, permissive, you could do that. And further with council too, if council wants to be more permissive, it's your right as a body to do that as well. State law treats anything above 2 units on a parcel as multifamily.
Okay,
so
that's the reason we're proposing to match the state law in the minimum level. Excuse me, as Councilmember Chow refers to, the council has the authority or the power to, and you said not to be more relaxed than the state law, but not more restrictive than the state law. Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Fruin.
So Councilmember Way covered a bunch of things that I was going to bring up just now. So I'm not actually sure that I have a whole lot to add other than to say that I agree with what she's saying, and if she's interested, I would be happy to offer a substitute motion that would add those particular provisions. So I think we can solve both problems in the following fashion, which would be to revise table 19.112.03A2, which is the table that describes the various standards for streamlined ADUs, to replace the word 1 with the words no more than 3. That way it's not just pick only one of each maximum. It would be any combination of them. Feel flexible to use them in the way that suits you best. For single family, for lots that are zoned for single family use. And then since there is a difference between R3 zones and R2 zones, and R2 is so much similar to R1, for those sites to add language of no more than 2 on lots zoned for duplexes, and then make the appropriate additions to the title of the table. Is that something that you think is workable?
I believe so, unless there's a legal reason not to be.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I don't think there's a legal reason why it's not workable. I would want planning to be comfortable that they could condition the projects in a way that did not generate more than 3 units. Because you could see that you would allow units that aren't allowed under state law, and then somebody could come back and say that they would want an additional unit that is allowed under state law and get more than council is intending to allow. And so I'm not sure that has to be in the ordinance, but planning would have to be comfortable conditioning the projects in that way if they chose to go in that direction.
Okay, if I were to provide you with more or less the language that I just gave you right now, do you think that that's sufficient?
Again, if I believe so, unless there's a legal reason not to be. So.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that we are limiting it to that. I don't want to wander into much further afield territory like 5 units and so forth. So with that, I'll offer the following substitute motion, which is to approve ordinance number 2254 as modified by the Planning Commission with the following additional changes. 1, that table 19.112.030A2 be revised to allow any combination of ADUs by replacing the word 1 with the words no more than 3 on lots zoned for single family use, and with, quote, no more than 2, end quote, on lots zoned for duplexes. That the title of table 19.112.030 be revised to read, quote, site development regulations for streamlined accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units associated with single-family residential uses and duplexes, end quote. And that further reading of the ordinance be waived, and that the City Council conduct the first reading of the ordinance by title only. And if it would help the clerk, I would be happy to send this to her.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a second for Vice Mayor Fruin's motion? Oh.
Okay, I'll second.
You second.
You.
Yes, I'll second that, but I do have some questions.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion proposed by Vice Mayor Fruin and seconded by Councilmember Wei. Discussion, Councilmember Chow?
Yeah, I think privacy concern is a big concern for Cupertino residents, so I want to clarify on that. With single-story ADU, I'm okay with that. In fact, I pushed to have the pre-approved ADU plan earlier, and I'm a little disappointed that we have only those tiny ones. I wish there could be more pre-approved ones. But two-story is a new thing, and I'm concerned if we don't have good standards in place, it could be, we could see things we can't foresee right now. So I would like to understand, if we approve, say, the motion that's on the table today, and now I'm going to build a two-story ADU, either detached or not detached. Could I build a balcony on that? Could I put a big balcony on that? Overlooking my neighbor's backyard with 4 feet to spare.
For
today, with what we are approving today.
The state's been very clear about adding design standards. Would the state so?
I mean not the streamlined. I mean the non-streamlined ones.
Yeah.
Of course.
I feel remiss that I wasn't clear on the process of the ADU ordinance. So what happens is, second reading happens, city adopts the ordinance. Within 60 days of that adoption, we have to send the ordinance to HCD for their review, for it to be considered compliant. And so within that 60 days, they review it and they send letters back. So it's almost like a mini housing element, to use a terrible example, but an example. And so when doing research and looking at how the state interprets certain things, the state is very transparent about their letters they issue to other cities, and you can see what they've issued and what they've discussed. And they've been very restrictive on design standards.
But balcony really is not a living space. It really does not restrict the living space of the unit.
Correct. I don't think staff has an opinion either way on whether we should.
Today, if we approve today, and let's say HCD approved that also, there is currently no standard on balcony.
Yeah, yes, correct. There's no restriction on balconies.
And someone can put a huge balcony on an ADU.
Point of clarification, John. So if somebody was to put a second-story balcony as part of the ADU, do we consider that as part of square footage for the ADU?
No.
No.
Is there a limitation to how big that balcony can be?
Not currently, no.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that given that we don't really have a good standard in place, I would prefer that we consider two-story, non-streamlined two-story ADU citywide a little later after we have better design standards that's reasonable in place. Of course, the standard would be aesthetic. It should not be impacting the living area. But then, for example, the window should be higher rather than looking down, or if balcony, the fence should be not transparent so that the privacy of the neighbor is protected. If we can consider those, then I'm happy to consider two-story, non-streamlined two-story ADU at the time.
So in some of I hear everything you're saying and understand your concerns. In some of the letters I've read from HCD to these jurisdictions who have applied similar standards, the response from HCD was, these are design standards which you cannot apply to
even
these
for
ADUs.
Non-streamlined ADUs?
They weren't specific as whether they're for non-streamlined or streamlined. And so, when it comes to balconies, that might be treated differently. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer on that one. If I was to guess, I would consider it a design standard, but I mean, if the council wants to add it to this, we could add it as part of the draft.
It's better when we adopt policy that we do it step by step and don't adopt something that open a big door to something we don't understand.
So,
right?
I'm just going to sort of jump in because I believe that's time, and you know, we're going to need a vote to extend the meeting relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
I would just caution. I mean, so we do currently have an ADU ordinance. It does not explicitly address balconies.
Mm-hmm.
I would caution adopting anything one way or another on that position until we do. Until we come back with more research, just because I don't really know the answer to the question that's being asked right now. I think the purpose of this ordinance is largely to conform our current ordinance to state law. I understand that there are additional changes that council is considering now, but I think with respect to the balconies, I would want to understand whether that's something that we could address in the context of ADUs. I would also, question just how often that really comes up as a practical matter in permitting these units. But that's something we could definitely consider. I just don't think it's something that we're prepared to have language for you tonight.
And along that line, through the mayor, if I may, really the purpose of today's ADU ordinance is not to adopt a new ordinance, is to bring our ordinance aligning the state code. So I just would like to bring that back to the focus of tonight's discussion. If council would like us to look into additional scope of the current ADU, we're more than happy to do that. But tonight's scope is really to bring our current ADU ordinance into state conformance.
Great. So I'd like to offer a substitute motion that will build on top of what Vice Mayor Fruin has proposed, but then in addition to be completely compliant with the state law, which is the purpose of today, bring us up to date. The state law does include the language that was included in the staff recommendation to the Planning Commission that would only allow two-story. I think some of the higher ADUs, not exactly two-story, but the staff recommendation from Planning Commission that include the half a mile walking distance from transit, so that we are compliant with the state law, but not going beyond it until we have a better understanding of the impact of these higher ADU units and then a better understanding of what kind of design standards we are allowed to apply. So that's my substitute motion. I can show you the staff recommendation from Planning Commission if you want.
Mayor, I'm unclear what that motion was.
Okay, so let me share a screen. So my motion is building on top of Fruin's substitute motion plus staff recommendation for the Planning Commission. So for these two bullet items that include the yellow highlighted words, those were removed by the Planning Commission. So I hope that we add them back to be completely in line with the state law and not including the cross space.
So just to clarify, Councilmember Chow, it's Vice Mayor Fruin's substitute motion plus all the yellow highlighted
plus
phrases.
Adding the yellow highlighted words to this part, yeah. So the within half a mile walking distance was in the original staff recommendation to Planning Commission, but then it was removed in the proposal we have today.
Okay, so you want to add it back?
So Councilmember Chow, if I could clarify for the clerk. So I believe the motion you're proposing is the staff recommendation at this meeting, modified by the the proposed changes in Councilmember Foon's substitute motion with these additional changes to add, to restrict the 25-foot, let me rephrase that, to restrict the availability of 25 ADUs that are 25 feet tall and 2 stories within a half-mile walking distance of a major transit stop or corridor. Is that an accurate reflection of what your intent is?
Yeah, and please also include that this is intended to be more in line with the current state law.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second. More.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just vote by lights on the.
Can I answer a question?
Okay.
So basically, you're doing a substitute motion with Vice Mayor Fruin's motion plus this.
Yeah.
So could that be a friendly amendment too? Oh, you want to do a substitute motion? I just want to make sure it is what you're doing, right?
If the friendly amendment is accepted, I'm happy to do that too. So you'll accept that?
I don't think I made the motion, so yeah, I would accept it.
You seconded it.
That's second, yes.
I would accept the version of it that applies only to non-streamlined ADUs.
Oh, definite. Yeah, I think so, right? That's without speaking.
That's up to you, Councilmember Chow.
I thought streamlined ADUs are already allowed citywide.
I would want to make it clear that the streamlined ones are not subject to these transit-related restrictions. If you would like to continue to restrain where a non-streamlined one could be located, I am fine with that.
I wanted to make a comment. I don't understand the relevance of the transit stop, the relationship between the transit stop and the height of the ADU.
Mayor, may I interrupt? We will need a vote to extend the meeting past 11.
All right.
I move we extend the meeting to 11:30 or 11:15.
Okay.
11:15 past that. Yeah, we're ready.
Let's go with 11:15.
Is there a second?
All right.
Second.
All right. Let's vote by lights. 11:15.
The motion to extend carries unanimously.
Okay, where were we? All right. So a friendly amendment was proposed by Councilmember Chow, and you've accepted it, Vice Mayor Fruin. Am I right?
Correct.
And
second, I'll accept that too.
You will. Okay, so let's vote on the friendly amendment proposed by.
So
Mayor,
I will change the wording slightly so it reads a little better, so it's shown on the screen.
Can you share it? We don't see it.
You don't see that?
No.
Oh.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, is that? Oh, sorry.
So
it reads a little better. Fluent substitute motion plus add these distance to transit restrictions below from staff recommendation to planning commission, and they apply only to non-streamlined ADUs. And the 2 bullet point to be more in line with the current state law. I guess this should fall in there.
So it's all good, except I don't think we need the line about to be more in line with current state law. I actually think it's valuable for us to show HCD that we're willing to go beyond the minimum.
Okay, so like that.
Looks great to me.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
I accept the friendly amendment.
All right.
Mayor, there was a second substitute motion on the floor that was moved by Chow and seconded by Moore. Is that withdrawn? Or
Then that's
So-
withdrawn.
Yes.
so
So
this
now we are
is
voting on the friendly amendment proposed by
The
Councilmember
first,
Chow.
the first substitute motion as amended by Councilmember Chow's friendly amendment that was accepted by the movement and the seconder.
And that's the one we are voting on.
okay.
Okay, so let's vote by lights.
Fruin's substitute motion as amended by Chow carries unanimously.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I did not conduct the reading of the title. Mayor, would you like me to do that
Yes,
now?
please, go
Is
ahead.
that acceptable, City Attorney?
Why don't you conduct the reading of the title and then we can redo the vote?
Very good. Does that work, Mayor? This is the first reading of ordinance number 23-2254, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino to amend Municipal Code Chapter 19.12, Chapter 19.28, and Chapter 19.112 regarding two-story permit and accessory dwelling unit ADU laws.
Okay.
So Mayor, shall I
Do we have to
run the
vote
vote
again?
again?
I would recommend revoting.
Okay, please vote by lights again.
Again, Fruin's substitute motion as amended by Chow carries unanimously again.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so let's wrap up the rest of the agenda. Item number 13, council reports and comments.
Mayor, at this point, I believe the meeting is adjourned by rule absent a vote to extend it.
Say that again?
So the meeting is adjourned by our rules of procedure absent a vote to extend it.
There was an adjournment. We do have an adjournment though, a specific adjournment.
Yes.
Yes.
So can
Oh,
I
so
go
so
ahead
why?
and-
Yeah, what we should adjourn. We should do the adjournment. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. This meeting is adjourned in memory of former Mayor Reed Sparks. That's it.